All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many familiar names here in the audience. My name is Agam Patel, and I'm the Associate Director here at UCR's Palm Desert Center, and I have the pleasure of serving as your President for Staff Assembly. I'm going to be joined today by other members of our board, Erica Leone, Vice President, who will be helping me moderate the questions, as well as Jeff Giroux, immediate past President, who will be helping manage our chat and Q&A feed. Welcome to our virtual campus town hall and strategic planning with Provost Watkins. A few important reminders before we begin. If you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A window at the bottom of your screens. Questions will be answered after the presentation and as time permits. During the Q&A, we will also be joined by Interim Chief Human Resources Officer John Stephen Henderson. This is a recorded webinar, and in order to ensure audio and video quality, all non-panelist attendees will remain muted and off camera during this session. And finally, we'll pick 4 random names from the attendees today, and you'll be notified afterwards if you're one of the lucky winners of a $25 Amazon gift card. All right, let's get started, shall we? It is my privilege today to introduce our keynote speaker. Elizabeth Watkins became Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor at UC Riverside on May 1st, 2021. As Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor, Watkins is the Chief Academic and Operating Officer for the campus, providing leadership to the entire academic enterprise, managing day-to-day operations of the university, overseeing resource allocation, and serving as a member of the campus leadership team. In the Chancellor's absence, the Provost serves as the Chief Executive Officer of UCR, but that's just her official stage bio, folks. What you also need to know is that Liz is a champion of all things staff. She tirelessly advocates on our behalf and works collaboratively with Staff Assembly on a variety of different fronts. Liz has been instrumental in getting us funding for initiatives such as UCR Staff Pantry, Staff Conference, and advocating for us to get an increase in our PARM funding. Thanks to her, the Staff Assembly President is a member of the Campus Finance Committee. And most recently, Liz was honored at UCR's Outstanding Staff Awards last month and won an award for her work and commitment towards staff. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you, Agam, for that lovely introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining this webinar. Today, I'm going to talk about the strategic plan. We are in draft phase now, and an essential part of this phase is for people to understand where we are and how they can get involved. So I believe that an email was sent out to participants pointing you in the direction of the message that I sent out to the faculty and staff as my spring campus update. So I'm going to talk briefly about that. Hopefully you've all read it or you've had an opportunity to see it. But I think what I'll do is share my screen, if that's okay. Agam, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so let me just talk a little bit about how we got to where we are and where we're going to, more importantly, where we're going to go. So many of you know that there was a robust strategic planning process that started at UCR in 2018. Consultants were involved. There was a steering committee. There were different working groups that included staff and faculty and student representatives, and a lot of really good work was done in imagining the future for UC Riverside. And as I understand it, the group was given the formidable task of looking way out, like out to our centennial, which is 2054. So it was sort of a 35-year timeline, which is really ambitious. And a lot of great work was done. There are some really interesting, informative, and innovative working group reports that were developed. And then the pandemic hit. And along with the pandemic, you'll remember, was great uncertainty about the budget, There were budget cuts associated with the losses that the campus faced because of the pandemic. And it became really hard to do both things. Bold visioning about the future on the one hand, and trying to deal with the day-to-day exigencies, not only of budget cuts, but honestly, of just getting up in the morning every day and dealing with the unknown. The staff and the faculty at UCR had to pivot on a dime. Everybody sent home and yet still keep the university operational for our students. So when I got here in May, my first inclination was just to press pause and try to manage ourselves through the pandemic. We're still navigating it, but when we successfully reopened in September, we were open for the most part for all of last year. And I used that time to talk to a lot of people, faculty and staff, sort of every opportunity I could to sort of get a sense of where people thought that we should go. And through these conversations, what I heard was a lot of great ambitions, a lot of pride in UCR's past and hope for its future. And yet every conversation seemed to come around to, but we don't have the money for it, or we don't have enough staff to do this. And this is a great idea, but we can't figure out how we would be able to move forward on this given the resources we have. And that really resonated with me. So I had that in the back of my mind. And then, I read the draft strategic plan. It was called Future Fluent. That is no longer our draft plan. What you're looking at, this matrix that I'm going to share with you, is our draft plan. But one of the sort of aha moments I had was I realized that what we were calling goals were actually pillars of our very identity. And you can see 4 of them here, and we are going to add a 5th. The pillars of our mission, which guide what we do in the short, medium, and long term, are: we do distinctive, transformative research and scholarship. We have a rigorous, engaging, and empowering learning environment. This is the education component. We have a welcoming, inclusive, and collaborative community. This is about who we are and not just us on this campus. This is a broad umbrella. When I say community, I'm thinking about our future students, those that we do outreach to in K through 12. I think of our alumni as part of our community. I think of our retirees and emeriti as part of our community. And I think about the city and county of Riverside, frankly, as our community. So this is a broad umbrella. And 4th, we have advancement of the public good. And then you may remember that in the email I sent out, I asked the campus community to think about whether we should add a 5th pillar on sustainability. And so far, the response has been an overwhelming yes. So we can talk more about that in the Q&A if you like, but I think that will be one of the revisions that we're going to make. So these are pillars, and to be perfectly frank, they're not different from the pillars of any other institution of higher education in the country. Everybody is doing research and scholarship, education, diversity and inclusion, and advancing the public good. So we're all doing this. The question is, how are we going to go about, what are the goals toward, achieving excellence in these 4 realms? And this is where we came up with the 3 very broad strategic goals for the campus. And so I'm just going to go over them briefly. The first relates back to the first point I made about budget. We can't implement all of our good ideas if we don't have the financial resources to do so. And so the very first thing that I need to do as provost, with everybody's help, obviously, is to ensure that we build financial stability, resiliency, and sustainability. And there are 2 broad objectives here. If you've been in any meeting with me over the past 15 months, you've heard me talk about increasing our revenues, not just being reliant on what we receive from the state and our California student tuition, but there are a number of other ways, that active levers that we can press to bring in revenues that will allow us to implement the programs that we want to and to achieve our goals. The second are improved financial models so that we can do better planning. You all know about Impact 23, and I'm really excited about this new financial system that's going to allow us to do budget projections in a way that we haven't done before. The second is all about people. Our main goal here, and again, this is very broad, is to invest in the success of the people who teach, do research, work learn, and live at UCR. It is inclusive of staff, faculty, and students. And you can see that we've broken down our objectives in terms of faculty, staff, and also graduate students and undergraduate students. And then I'll talk a little bit more about I'll come back to these in a second. And then the third goal is to expand the visibility and scope of influence of UC Riverside, locally, nationally, and globally. And so what do I mean by that? The last strategic plan talked about achieving the profile of an AAU institution. The AAU is the American Association of Universities. It's the 65 top research universities in the country. We, thanks to the hard work of the faculty and staff here over the past decade, we do have the profile of an AAU institution. We're in the bottom quintile, but we look very similar to the bottom quintile of institutions that are members of the AAU. What they don't have that we have is a diverse student population and a commitment to social mobility and equity. And that's why we think it's really important for us to be part of that conversation. So that's a goal for us. Turns out you can't just join the AAU, you have to be invited. And so that's something that we'll be working on. The second is really grounding ourselves in where we live and work, where our campus is. And I've been using the language of an anchor institution to talk about this. Anchor institutions are responsible for economic development in their regions. And so that means not only producing graduates who will then go out and get jobs in the region, it also means being supportive of businesses in the region and bringing them on as partners. It's bringing industry to the region, and this is a big part of our OASIS initiative. So that's one of our goals. And then again, just getting recognition both nationally and on a global scale as well. So these are sort of our broad campus goals. And hopefully they're inclusive enough for each of the different units to see how the goals for their specific unit might map onto these. And so that's really the next stage of what we're working at. And so depending on what unit you work on, obviously if you're on the finance team, then you're right here helping me develop these improved financial models. Not everybody has to be working to advance every goal. If you are in the schools and colleges, then you're probably working here to improve graduate student success and pipelines, to improve the undergraduate student success and experience. I had the opportunity to join the CHAZ leadership team this past weekend at their retreat, where they began to map on the goals for that college and to see how they aligned with these campus goals. If you're working in international affairs, you're probably working here and helping us to develop our global learning. This will get this award for global learning, research, and engagement. And back on page 1, you're probably helping us think about grow our non-resident enrollment. So what I'm hoping will happen over the next 6 months is that the faculty and staff in the units, and I mean the schools, the colleges, and all of our major support units will come together to develop their own strategic plans with a format like this. And what I mean by that is we are not doing the traditional long narrative, 25 to 50 pages where we explain, what UCR is, who we are at UCR and what we do, and boast about our successes. And we, publish this fancy document that then gets put in a drawer. Instead, we're stripping it down to figure out what our objectives are, what are the initiatives we're going to take to achieve them, what action items we have to do, metrics, how are we going to measure our success, and who's the lead, who are the responsible people to move these initiatives forward. We are going to use a dynamic website to track our progress. Again, rather than a static document that's published and kind of final, this is a living document. And thanks to the help of our wonderful staff over in communications, they're developing a website where we'll be able to sort of track timelines and goals and tell the stories of our successes. The final thing I'll say about this strategic plan is we have reduced the timeline to what I think is a much more manageable and reasonable 7 years. So this is called UCR 2030. That's what we're looking ahead to. It's consistent with the goals that the system has set, UC 2030. I mean, you can see links to those in the email that I sent out. but the system has goals for us in terms of increasing graduation rates, reducing equity gaps, and increasing faculty diversity. So these are in alignment with those. I think so. While this is stripped down, I think that what it does is it allows us to build on our prior successes, leverage our existing strengths, and then begin to imagine what our future looks like, but providing ourselves with the realistic foundation to be able to achieve those goals. All right, that was a lot of talking from me. I'm going to stop sharing and let's open it up to questions.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for framing that conversation. If I can have Vice President Erica Leone join us as well, that'd be good. She and I will take a turn to ask some questions. We've got some pre-submitted questions as well, and we'll get to those. But I want to remind folks here that the Q&A window is open. Please submit your questions as it relates to the strategic plan. We know you have questions about staff and HR related things, but we'll address those towards the end of our conversation here. But I'll get started. Liz, you talked a little bit about why you picked 2030. So that was going to be my first question, but I have a second question here. What are some of the guiding principles that colleges, departments, and units need to embark on here?
Well, I think the guiding principles can be based on the pillars of our mission, mapped onto our values. And I just learned about the core four, and maybe John Stephen can help me with those. I just learned there's a wonderful program that HR is developing to help us sort of expand just awareness of our core values, and then mapped onto sort of the goals that we've developed, that we think are important from the campus perspective, which are, they may be about they're going to be about student success, but they're also about fostering faculty and staff professional growth. So I think it's a combination then of kind of using this as a roadmap, and then being very specific about what's happening within that unit. So, the goals that that BCOE is going to develop will be different from those that student affairs are thinking about. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap and interconnection, but the point is, and I should have mentioned this at the outset, this strategic plan is for us as employees of UCR, to help us guide our work. This is not an externally facing document. Advancement and communications can take things from this and they can build on it, but that's not what we're doing. We're talking to ourselves and making sure that we as faculty and staff sort of know how we fit in, why we're doing what we're doing, and what's the blueprint for how we want to move forward. Does that answer that question?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Okay, I have the next question for you, Liz, and thank you so much again for being here with us and for going through the strategic plan with us. So one thing that we were curious about is, this is a broad plan. What's something that could potentially trip people up as they start this exercise, as they start the plan for their colleges and orgs? And are there any tips that you can share to help us kind of avoid getting tripped up when we start?
Yes, don't try to do too much. This is an overachieving group of people at UCR. It's probably why we've been so successful, but we are so overachieving that sometimes I think, we are just aiming for the stars, which is great, but we also want our plan to be tethered to reality. What can we accomplish on this earth? So I guess the first thing I would say is think in reasonable chunks of reasonably achievable goals. I think, and this may be me personally, but I think it's frustrating to set goals that we know are unachievable. Which isn't just, and I'm not saying aim low, don't take this the wrong way. I am saying aim high, but think about the realistic real world constraints within which we work in terms of, both human and financial resources to be able to get things done. So not biting off more than we can chew. And then I think also, playing to our strengths. We are a world-class university and we do a lot of things really well. No university can do absolutely everything. So this is probably not the time to start, brand new programs that are completely unrelated to anything that we have been doing. Let's build on our strengths. And again, I'm not saying we just have to stay in our lanes. What I'm saying is spread our wings from where we already are. So, and this is, I think, where some really exciting opportunities and programs can come. I had a wonderful meeting this morning with the Dean's Council about interdisciplinary efforts and how we can leverage and build on the strengths we have to do that kind of work. And really, it's just a lot of that might be just thinking about how we can talk to each other to move these kinds of programs forward.
Thank you, Liz. So talk to us a little bit about how sustainability would be a unifying theme.
Okay. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this in a number of registers. I mean, first of all, when I got to UCSF, one of the first things I heard about was OASIS, right? Opportunities for Advancing Sustainability, Innovation, and Social Inclusion. And I heard about it initially in sort of a narrower framework of of what the first stage is, which is, building a clean tech park. And you all saw that in the state budget, there's money for us to move ahead with that program, which is really exciting. But early on, I heard the Chancellor speak about this much more expansively and to talk about, how really everything we do is, and if it isn't, should be related to sustainability. We are at a crisis point. And I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know, right? But in terms of climate change, we're at a real crisis point. And it's our obligation, I think, to our students and our own children and grandchildren to try to help, to provide them with a sustainable future. And I don't just mean that in terms of the environment. I think that this is much broader. It involves sustainability in terms of our culture, of our social institutions, our civilization, our education. And you'll see, if you read closely in the email I sent, I had a paragraph which asked the campus about sustainability. And as I was thinking about it, there's no person working here who doesn't touch sustainability in some way. No matter what, if you're faculty, no matter what you're researching, if you're staff, no matter where you're working, there is something that you're doing to help engage with and improve sustainability. It could be on the very pragmatic level, of our dining hall workers in terms of thinking about food waste. Our transportation team is working hard to think about sustainability in terms of, providing for electric vehicles, to, helping our students think about, what, how they can, live more sustainably in the dorms. Everyone has a role to play. And so that's sort of how I see that as an obvious fifth pillar of our obligation as a large, I think are we the second largest employer in Riverside? It's our obligation to do our part and so much more and leverage the talents of our faculty and the students who are working with them to find those solutions and then implement them.
Okay, next question for you. How can we be more deliberate about including retention, promotion, professional development, and succession planning into the strategic plan?
I think this falls into the second strategic goal, right? Of investing in people. And this will, again, it's an overarching goal I have that UCR will be an employer of choice, that people will not only want to come work here, but they'll want to stay here. And I think then this really does cascade down to the units. And I hope that, that managers and supervisors are thinking about these very issues, about inclusion, about building community, about developing an environment where people feel invested as they want to stay. Now, I also know that there's certain practicalities about this too, which have to do with the conditions of work. It has to do with salary. We do equity reviews on a biannual basis. So there's the opportunity for staff to move up in salary according to what career track they're in. And so we're very mindful of keeping, and that program will continue to go to move forward throughout through 2030.
Very, very well. Thank you, Liz. So we've got some questions coming in into our Q&A feed, and I'll get you started. This is one on curriculum. How does updating our curriculum fit into this plan, and how is the Provost's office helping us move the curriculum forward?
Oh, that's a really good question. Parallel to this whole strategic planning process, the Senate was actively engaged in thinking about the breadth requirements and what general education means at UCR. So I hope that the Senate will be working really closely. We'll be working in parallel to decide what the next step is for general education. Are we going to, will the new plan be implemented? Will it be something that's sort of a combination of what already exists in terms of the breadth courses that are required for each of the colleges? I know that we have a sustainability committee that's working to develop a sustainability curriculum. They're working on a minor and a master's program. So I think, again, the curriculum lives with the faculty. So this is faculty own the curriculum, and I want them to be engaged in thinking about, continuous improvement, which they do. I mean, this is not something new in the strategic plan, right? Programs are reviewed every few years. Faculty get together on an annual basis to think about their curriculum. There was a long list of adjustments to different programs approved by the Senate at the May divisional meeting. This is an ongoing process. I think what would be interesting is if we do adopt sustainability as our fifth pillar, we can see how that fifth pillar will interact with the second pillar of the learning environment and how we might be building programs to support that pillar of our mission.
Okay, our next question from Q&A, and we actually tapped on this a little bit at our Chaz retreat, but can you please explain more if these goals include safety for faculty and staff while on campus? The campus talks about wanting to engage faculty and staff and try to find ways in retention to retain us, but the issue of safety is not addressed or work group created. Nothing comes out of it. What measures are being put in place to show value?
Thank you for that question. It's a really important one. And you're right, there's not yet an explicit initiative. Safety is first and foremost a priority. We prioritize health and safety. We talked a lot about that in terms of the pandemic, but Eric, I think you're talking about something much more expansive. I think you're talking about both physical and psychological safety. And that is a huge priority for the leadership team. And I know that John Stephen and his group in HR have that in the forefront of their minds as well. So what are we doing about that? I think that the one concrete thing I can talk to, and I'm imagining this is part of the strategic plan that will come out of our new health, well-being, and safety unit is just that. We are reimagining the way our police department works, which will now be called our campus safety department. They're, as you know, integrated into this new unit along with our other health and well-being units, many of which were in student affairs before. And I think that having the police interact with these social service and mental health professionals is really going to help us to build out a much more robust plan for ensuring the safety on both the physical and psychological level is expanded. And again, I would say, this is the broad community, right? Not just for our faculty and staff and our students, but also for people as we bring community members onto our campus. And so I would expect that group would be tasked with really thinking about specific initiatives. And again, not working in a silo though, right? That's not gonna help. So there'll be partnerships with HR, partnerships with the schools and colleges, partnerships with staff assembly and the Senate to make sure that we're rowing in the same direction.
Thank you, Liz. Here's the next question. What opportunities does achieving AAU status provide to UCR?
It provides us a seat at the table. And what I mean by that is we are a top university. We want to be in conversation with those other top universities to talk about priorities. And for us, as you know, one of our priorities is social mobility. That's not been a priority of the other AAUs, and we think that it should be. The national conversation is already changing in this direction. Many of you may know that there's a Carnegie classification system. It's a mandatory classification system for all institutes of higher institutions of higher learning. There are actually a number of qualifications. We tend to only focus on the R's, which focus on research. There's R1, there's R2, there's R3. You may have heard that Merced is an R2, it wants to become an R1. All the other UCs are R1s. UCSF is on R1. It's a something else that I can't remember because it's primarily healthcare. There's a classification for primarily liberal arts colleges. And this all sort of, these are very traditional metrics about faculty and student, faculty success, based on research dollars and publications, awards, membership in national honorary academies. The Carnegie classification next year is going to roll out a brand new mandatory classification system on social and economic mobility. And they've asked our chancellor to be part of figuring out what that should look like, because we are, as you know, a leader in this space. It's our belief that we need to bring these two things together. They're not separate. They're part and parcel of excellence. And so by being part of AAU, we have a megaphone, if you will, or a soapbox, choose your metaphor of how we can amplify our voice to show what the future of higher education should look like. Excellence is diversity, excellence is social mobility, excellence is research, excellence is creative activity. It's all of these things. And we're doing them here at UCR. It would give us a platform to demonstrate that and frankly, change the national conversation. And what I mean by that is bringing attention to what we and other institutions are doing as predominantly minority serving institutions.
Thank you for that, Liz. I also, you tapped on this next question a bit when we talked about the biannual equity for staff, but I want to take advantage of John Stephen, who's also here, our interim AVC of HR. The question that we have is, I love that we support staff with staff pantry. How are we addressing inequities that drive staff to use pantry services? Are there folks that are paid less than a living wage?
Wow, that's a great question. Let me start off with one of the things we care deeply about our staff, well, faculty, students, everyone too. And we're always trying to pay competitively and more competitively, actually. We put a lot of focus in salary surveys and salary setting, those types of things every year to make sure we're trying to keep our rates up. One of the things that, Liz has already mentioned is the biannual, salary equity process. We do other scans across the university as well to say, hey, are there certain areas we should be focusing on? And then trying to actually get other additional resources to specific classifications as well when needed to actually try to prevent people from needing the pantry. One of those things, and, Liz spoke to it a little bit, and I hate, blaming anything on budget, but we don't have the budget to pay everybody ideally where we would want them to. I mean, if this was, if I had a magic wand and I could just say, hey, everybody's going to be paid $100,000 more, yay, that would be great, but that's not realistic. So we are doing everything we can. The, even the salary increases that, that were for the non-represented that just came across, those were planned all the way back in November to be about the 4.5% rate versus a 3% that we thought we were going to have, but we really pushed harder because we knew costs were going up. We wanted to do more, and it turns out that, hey, we got it, but we still want to do more. So we may actually have another round coming up this year to actually help address some of these, some of these financial issues. But we're constantly looking at it. We're looking at equity. It comes up almost every day. And it's unfortunate that people do need help, but we're trying to get them the help when we can. So it's a very active process. Let me say that.
Thank you, JS.
Liz, this one's for you. So what is the plan for using the $45 million of sustainability-focused funding that the state recently provided us? And of course, as you mentioned, it is going to be the fifth pillar. Can you talk a little bit more about if you have some plans for that allocation?
I can, and I think, and hopefully this has been publicized pretty widely to the campus, but this is going to provide the basis for developing our clean tech park, which we are really excited about. This is, so many of you know, the building that University Extension used to occupy on the other side of the highway on University Ave is seismically unstable and would have required tens of millions of dollars to renovate, if not more. That's a conservative estimate. So the ambition is for that to come down and for us to build a clean tech park, which will have two anchor tenants. One will be University Extension, so they'll move back in, and the other will be our Center for Environmental Research and Technology. And then the hope is that we will have some industry partners. And this is, remember, I talked about us being an anchor institution and working to actively be an economic engine for Riverside City and County. So the goal is to bring in clean tech industry to have their, whether it's their headquarters or to have offices in this building that are working, that will probably be industries that collaborate with our researchers on campus in terms of supporting it, but that are also links to good jobs for our students. So that's the initial use. And is that enough to build a building in this economy? No, but it's a start.
Great. The next question I have is kind of for both of you. I think, Liz, you can answer this from the campus, and JS, maybe if you could give us some perspective on an org level. How can staff contribute to reaching these goals, work groups, task force, individual departments, and is there a mechanism to track our progress?
Thanks for that question. Let me just say, this strategic plan no strategic plan would work without the buy-in and support of staff. That's why I'm here today talking to staff about it. This is not just about faculty. Staff are the lifeblood of this institution. So we absolutely need you to participate. And that will depend on what unit you're in and sort of where you are, in your job. So, is everyone participating at absolutely an equal amount? No, but there's certainly ways to get involved. So each of the units will be putting together their own, as I said, mapping sort of their own strategic plan, which will look like this. Will be, sort of bullet point form. We're not writing long narratives. So through your supervisors, you have the opportunity to provide feedback. And I know that the leaders will be looking for that feedback to kind of roll up. So don't be shy about sharing your thoughts and opinions. If pay attention to your email. I always tell students this. Read your email. You never know what interesting things you're going to find in there. There may be a call from your department to participate in a work group. So be actively looking for those opportunities to join. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We have a good sense of where we need to go. What each unit is doing is thinking about some actionable initiatives that may already be in progress and that they're just sort of codifying and tracking. It may be some new initiatives that they'll be sort of thinking about, further out. Remember, we're only looking at sort of from now till 2030. And this plan, I should say, of course, is building on the very successful 2020 plan that came out in 2010. So, once each unit has their plans, which sort of maps on, you'll see that there are different, I'm looking at my own screen and hopefully some of you have this pulled up on yours. But, you'll see initiatives and action items. Those action items are where you'll get involved. And the metrics are how we'll tell how we're doing. And we will track those. I'm hoping that we'll be doing our tracking on an annual basis, so that we can shift course if we need to. I think that's important. We've got in this social and economic environment, we've got to be nimble. And that's often hard for a university to do. But by providing ourselves with measurable goals and sort of milestones, we can see how we're doing, and then we can change course year to year if we find that we're not meeting those goals. We may set some goals that are really aspirational, and we shouldn't be disappointed if we only get part of the way there. And I'll give you an example of this. In the last strategic plan in the one from 2010, that was UCR 2020, the ambitious goal was to increase extramural grant funding threefold. We actually increased it 70%. That's still huge. And I think, so this is what I mean by, I think we can set these high goals. And if we get a significant proportion of the way there, that's a win. And we should celebrate that. Same thing, I'll give you another one. And so we will continue that. So that trajectory we hope will continue. You can see that one of the initiatives from the campus perspective is to continue to increase our extramural grant funding. And to make that happen, we know that we're going to have to make some investments, and primarily in staff, to help our faculty do this. So this is not just sort of a, exhorting faculty to go apply for more grants. This is an acknowledgement on my part and part of the Vice Chancellor for Research and the deans that we're going to make some investments in staff who can support our faculty toward those goals. I'll give you one more example from the last strategic plan, which the goal was to increase the proportion of graduate and professional students to 18 to 20%. Well, we got from 11% to 14%. There was a great, if you look at the absolute numbers, we grew significantly. Of course, at the same time, our undergraduate population grew significantly as well. So the denominator kept growing, but we're on the right trajectory and we'll continue on that path.
Great. I think it's important for all of us, every faculty member, every staff member, all of us to actually always recognize that what we do every day is always moving forward towards these goals. We're not going to achieve these goals as, one individual. Liz can't do it all by herself without the support and help of her entire team. None of us can do that. And I think one of the things that's really important for us to recognize, and, as all the supervisors and managers, all the leaders, when we're putting together our objectives or our goals for our teams, making sure that we're tying them into the greater mission of the university. And I think one of those things that sometimes gets lost is that, all of these details, clean buildings, safe buildings, talking about safety. If people don't feel safe on campus, how are they going to actually be able to work effectively? So all of us actually have a large part in this. We're not all researchers. We're not all in the labs. We're not all people that are grant writers and going to get grants, but all of the work that all of us do actually supports towards these bigger, the overall goal. And, I made an analogy in another meeting I was in. I have a friend who was or actually still is, he's a trainer. Like, he actually wraps people's wrist up, or, right now he's at the Warriors. So he actually gets a ring when they win a championship. He never touches, he doesn't actually even know how to play basketball that well himself, but, he's never on the court. He doesn't play. He doesn't sit on the bench, but he's in the back supporting the players, because without his work, they wouldn't win these championships. He says, I'm responsible for Steph Curry's ankles. Hey, that's a pretty big thing, but do we really see it? And I think that's what we always have to make sure that we do. We all have our parts and our roles to play. And when we're, it kind of gets back to what Liz mentioned earlier about the core four. And, I put a link out there to the tartansoul.ucr website where you can actually see the core four. And the first part of it is excellence. If we take excellence in our roles and about what we're trying to do and achieve, we have respect for others, integrity. And then, of course, the last one, accountability, is really important for us to do that, because if we all are focused on the same thing and moving ourselves forward, and again, leaders and supervisors, you have to make sure you have the proper goals and objectives that are going to lead towards a greater goal for all of us. And I think that's what we really have to do at a unit to unit, regardless of what that unit is, to make us all advance and achieve.
Thank you, JS. So this question is for both of you, and we'll start with Liz on this. This question has been voted up several times here. How can remote work be incorporated to promote both sustainability and employee retainment across our organization?
Thank you for that question. It is not a surprise that people have asked this question. I know that this has been addressed in a number of town halls prior to this. So let me be perfectly clear. Remote and hybrid work is here to stay. This is our position. We get it. I think UC Riverside was a little bit late to the game. The pandemic pushed us in that direction in a really dramatic fashion. And now we're trying to figure out what's the right balance. And there's no one size fits all. And I know that's disappointing to some people, because it would be great to just have, the Chancellor and me say, this is the way it's going to be. And then maybe like 1% of the people would be happy, but 99% would be dissatisfied. But it wouldn't make sense from a business operations perspective. Remote, whether you can work remotely depends on the work that you do. And I want to be really clear about that. We have a significant proportion of our staff who need to be on campus, and we want to recognize that. Our skilled tradesmen, our housing and dining workers, our custodial service, our landscapers, they make this, we talked about safety, physical safety, they make this campus safe and operational. And I think that's, I can't overstate the importance of that. And On the other extreme, we know that there are some people who, and arbitrarily picking, who could be working in, say, information systems or in finance, who do a lot of what we call back office work, who probably can be fully remote. And that's probably another segment. And then there's everyone in the middle who probably will end up with some kind of hybrid. And there's a spectrum for what that hybrid looks like. Some people might be able to work 4 days a week and then just come in once a week, or maybe even only once a month. Some people, on the reverse, might work 3 or 4 days in the office, but take a couple of days to work remotely. So how are we going to decide to do that? It's happening on the unit level. And I know this has caused some consternation because people are looking across units. People are concerned about their own supervisors not being fully sympathetic. So I'm asking all of you who are supervisors on here to think this through intentionally. I had hoped it would happen this spring because we wanted these arrangements and the telecommute arrangements in place for July 1, as we sort of did this, what I call the year of experimentation, to see how it goes. But there are 3 factors to consider. The first is the individual and the work that they do. Is this work that can be done in a remote setting? And when I say a remote setting, I don't mean a mountaintop disconnected from the internet. I mean at a workstation that's not at UC. It means that you have full access to the internet and to Zoom, that you're available for Zoom meetings. So, that if Agam is working remotely and I have a question, I can just ping him on Zoom, just like I would if I had gotten up out of my chair and gone to ask him a question. In fact, it's probably faster because I'm just pressing a button rather than getting my butt out of a chair and walking down to find his office and, maybe he's not there. So it's an expectation that we have, that we do remote work, that you are available, but you just are not physically on campus. So what's the work that's being done? The second thing to consider is the team. How will the individuals being remote affect the team? Is it going to, if it disproportionately burdens other team members, then that has to be negotiated as a group in terms of taking turns. And I'm thinking here, I'll give an example of, say, some student-facing groups. We know that students, they got a taste of remote and they want it both ways. And it's our obligation to provide them with that. They want to have, let's just take advising as an example, but it could be financial aid. It could be any kind of student services. They want to be able to walk in and see a human, and they want the ability to to meet with a professional online. We've got to be able to do both. And in that sense, I think those teams have to share that work. And then the third is, what does it mean for our clients, as it were? It depends who your clients are. I just talked about people whose clients are students. Some of you staff, your clients are faculty. Some are other staff. So thinking that through, those decisions have to be made. And I hope these conversations have been going on. And what I will tell you is, if your individual situation isn't, if you feel like you're not being treated fairly, you can and you should escalate. You have really talented HR business partners in each of your units, and that's their job to work these things out. We take our jobs and we learn how to work to do interpersonal relations and human resources, and we can learn more. We can always do better, but we have these professionals to help us navigate these situations. So don't stew. Go talk to your HR business professional. John Stephen, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I mean, you covered it really well. I think the most important thing I want to make sure people hear is remote and hybrid work is here to stay. That was Liz's opening statement. And I think people should really actually understand that, but also understand it's not going to necessarily look the same way for everyone. So, we understand the great resignation. That it's real. A lot of people have resigned from a lot of organizations, primarily because of, flexibility. One of the things we're really trying to push is the flexibility. And as Liz said, can you get your work done? How does it impact your other team members? You may have to negotiate that a bit. And it's interesting because it's not one size fits all, because what we're realizing now too is some people are saying, as much as I love working from home every day or almost every day, I really like coming to the office sometimes too. But when I came to the office, nobody else was there, so it was lonely. So it's getting back to this thing of trying to figure out what our balance is and making sure that we're creating connectivity, to the campus, to the environment, to everyone doing all these great things, but also providing that flexibility. And, and I can't stress this enough. We've talked to a number of supervisors, managers, including, I know one of the vice chancellors had this conversation with about why we really need to allow people to actually try to be more flexible with them where we can. If they've been doing it for the last 2.5 years, why can't they continue it? And what are the things that we're going to miss? And it has very specific reasons where we can and where we can't, so that, it's never going to be equal in terms of everybody's not going to be treated the exact same, but but there is equitability about your roles. And I think that's one of those things that really has to be focused on too. Not everybody's going to be 100% happy. Not everybody's going to be fully remote if they want to be fully remote just because. But we've done, and I can say we've seen it change, and we've seen a lot of managers have grown that may have been like a little bit stubborn before, but now they're really realizing, hey, this is the way to do business going forward, and it's really working. So I'm really, really happy. I think Riverside was maybe a little bit slow to really get on board, but I'm really proud of where we've been in some of the adjustments that I've seen in some employees I've been talking to, even some of the managers that actually were completely against it before. And he's like, "You're right. This is working out for us." So as we grow, as we learn, my hope is that we're going to find more ways to actually be able to offer more remote or hybrid schedules. We actually have some resources on the HR website. I don't remember the page exactly right now, but go there later afterwards. I can actually forward it to you so you can forward it to this group. But we actually have a lot of resources on our website about how you can talk to your managers about trying to be remote and how the manager should be thinking about it. And, we can take it through the deans or the vice chancellors or whomever else to make sure that we're all on the same page there.
Thank you, JS. We've got just about 6 or 7 minutes left here, Liz and JS. As we wrap things up, would you like to comment and share with us any final thoughts as we embark on this journey and continue on this journey?
Just a couple of things. I'll just say a couple of things, John Stephen. I'll turn it over to you. The first thing I do is I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank the staff for just everything that you have done, that you do, that you will continue to do. As I listened to John Stephen just now, I was like, we're in uncharted territory, and it's scary. And I think we just sort of need to acknowledge that as well, that change is hard. And I want to thank those of all of you for being willing to try something new, to embrace change. The only thing that's constant is change, but I know that it's hard. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you for your forbearance as we kind of navigate what this brave new world looks like in terms of the future of work. Specifically for the strategic plan, coming back to why we gathered today, I want to thank you for your interest. I see there's 300 people on this call, and that warms my heart to know that staff really care about the direction of the university. And I'm thrilled that you've taken the time to be involved in this and to figure out how your voice can be heard. And I hope that you do see, as John Stephen did a really nice job of describing, of where you play your part in this. We're not all doing everything, but we each have a part to play in helping move some piece of this forward. And I also hope that we see that this is not radically new. We are doing what this amazing university has done since 1954. Our growth trajectory has been awesome. I expect we'll continue on that. We're just trying to provide ourselves with some blueprints. So, we know what to do when we come to work each day, but also what we're shooting for. So again, just thank you for your participation and your caring.
Yes. So I'll say ditto. Thank you very much to Staff Assembly for having us here, putting this together. Thank you all for caring enough to actually come and watch and listen. Hopefully it was helpful. I'd say that one of the things that we should all be proud of is that we're all Highlanders. And if you think about the strategic plan from where we've gone, where we've been to where we are now, and now the new one that we have going out for 2030. And as Liz just mentioned, we have a lot of great growth trajectory ahead of us. And I know for some people, when they start thinking about growth, they're thinking about change and, oh my God, it's another change. And some people have change fatigue. But I really think of this growth and where we're going in terms of more opportunities. It's opportunities for us to learn and grow and do more things. And I think one of the things we hear a lot from staff is, wow, what's my next job, or what can I do, I feel like I'm stagnated here. Wow, when we're growing a lot, that opens up a lot of opportunities for many of us. And I say we should be trying to really think about it as opportunities for advancement, opportunities for growth, for both for ourselves as well as for the campus. It'll help actually retain more staff, and we kind of think of it that way. It's going to be more opportunities for all of us. And I think that's an incredible thing that I really want people to listen to and think about. If you think about where we were back in 54, 55, I wasn't even born yet, but we were so much smaller. If you look at some of the pictures of where we are and to where we are today, to going out, to the Palm Desert. I mean, we have so much potential, so much growth, so many opportunities for advancement for all of us and for the university and to the AAU. I think that's something that we should really be proud of and really be looking forward to. Don't look at it as just new changes, but look at it as new opportunities that we have. And that's what I would really encourage folks to do. And I know that's the way I'm looking at it.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Liz. Opportunity is a good word to end on. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your perspectives, both you and Liz. As always, we have an active staff and entrepreneurial minds, and we couldn't do this without all of you. I want to thank the staff that attended this session. A recording of this will be posted up on our social media, on our Facebook page, as well as our website. We will also announce the winners of 4 lucky random attendees that'll get a $25 gift card. We'll reach out to you with the details and celebrate you on our social media. And I want to thank again Liz and John Stephen for coming on and sharing your perspectives. Enjoy your day, everybody, and have a good week.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Bye, thank you.